Most people have a picture in their mind of what a healed person looks like. They imagine someone serene, endlessly patient, someone who responds to every difficulty with measured calm, who speaks gently even when treated harshly, who remains open and available and warm no matter what is brought to them. Someone who has processed everything, forgiven everyone, and arrived at a place of luminous, unconditional acceptance. It's a beautiful picture. It's also almost entirely wrong. And for empaths especially, this picture isn't just inaccurate, it's dangerous, because it becomes the standard against which they measure their own healing. And by that standard, they will always fall short. They will always find a reason to believe they haven't healed enough, haven't forgiven enough, haven't opened their heart wide enough to qualify as truly, finally well. Carl Jung spent decades studying what psychological wholeness actually looked like in real human beings. Not the idealized version, not the spiritual performance, the real thing. And what he found consistently surprised the people who encountered it, because it looked nothing like what they expected. Jung found that genuinely healed individuals weren't softer than the people around them. In many ways, they were harder to manipulate, harder to guilt, harder to pull back into dynamics they had already recognized as harmful. They were warmer in the ways that mattered, and considerably cooler in the ways that used to destroy them. And almost no one at first glance understood what they were looking at. Today, I want to show you what Jung actually discovered about healed empaths, what they look like, how they move through the world, and why the version society sold you was never healing at all. It was just a more sophisticated form of the same trap. Forgiveness has been so thoroughly conflated with healing that most empaths believe that until they feel warmth toward every person who hurt them, the work isn't done. That somewhere in the architecture of true healing, there must be a moment of complete, heartfelt release toward the people who caused the most damage. Jung had a very different understanding of forgiveness. He didn't see it as a feeling to be manufactured toward another person. He saw it as an internal act of liberation, the decision to stop allowing someone else's actions to continue shaping your present. Forgiveness in Jung's framework had nothing to do with the other person at all. It had everything to do with reclaiming the energy that was still bound up in resentment, in hope, in the exhausting emotional labor of maintaining any kind of investment in someone who had proven themselves harmful. A healed empath may have zero warm feeling towards certain people. They may have no desire for contact, reconciliation, or even the distant benevolence that forgiveness is often imagined to require. Jung recognized this story for what it was, not a celebration of the empath's gifts, a strategy for keeping those gifts accessible. Because here is what genuine healing produces in an empath, not wider availability, narrower availability, more deliberate availability. The healed empath becomes extraordinarily selective about where their energy goes, not because they have become small or fearful, but because they have finally understood that their sensitivity is not a public resource. It is a private treasure that belongs to them, to be shared with people who have earned that access, through consistent demonstration of respect, reciprocity, and care. Jung found that this selectivity was consistently misread by the people who lost access to the empath as a result of it. They called it coldness. They called it arrogance. They called it the empath thinking they were better than everyone. But what it actually was, Jung observed, was the empath finally treating themselves with the same consideration they had always extended to others. Nothing more, nothing less. A healed empath doesn't owe anyone their depth, and they know it now. The image of healed as peaceful has done enormous damage to empaths in the middle of genuine growth, because healing, as Jung understood it, is not a destination of perpetual calm. It is a state of dynamic aliveness, and aliveness includes anger. The healed empath is not beyond anger.
They are in right relationship with it. They no longer swallow it to keep the peace. They no longer perform serenity while something inside them corrodes. They no longer absorb the dysfunction of an entire room and call that spirituality. Jung was emphatic on this point. He believed that an individual who had no access to their anger had not healed. They had simply found a more socially acceptable way to suppress themselves. Real integration, in his view, required the full range of human emotional experience, including the fierce, protective, boundary-enforcing energy that says, "This is not acceptable," and means it without apology. The healed empath feels anger cleanly and releases it cleanly. They don't weaponize it. They don't suppress it. They don't perform their way around it. They let it move through them, and they let it do its work, which is to signal clearly and unmistakably where a line has been crossed. This is not regression. This is wholeness. What the healed empath actually looks like, according to Jung, is something far more interesting than what society imagined. They are present without being permeable. They can sit with another person's pain without absorbing it, bearing witness without losing themselves, offering genuine compassion without making someone else's emotional reality more important than their own. They are warm in a way that feels different from the warmth they offered before healing. Before, their warmth was often tinged with anxiety, the need to be needed, the discomfort of someone else's displeasure, the subtle performance of someone who learned early that their value was contingent on what they provided. After healing, their warmth is clean. It comes from fullness rather than from fear, and people who encounter it can feel the difference, even if they can't name it. They are honest in a way that used to feel impossible. They say what they observe. They name what they feel. They decline what doesn't serve them without constructing elaborate justifications, without softening the truth past the point of recognition, without managing everyone else's reaction to their reality. And perhaps most significantly, they are comfortable with being misunderstood. Jung believed this was one of the final markers of genuine individuation, the capacity to be seen incorrectly by people who need a particular version of you to exist, and to remain quietly and without defensiveness exactly who you are anyway. The healed empath no longer needs the people who misread them to correct their perception. They've stopped requiring external accuracy as proof of internal worth. They know who they are. They know what they've survived and what that survival built in them. And the opinion of someone who benefits from misunderstanding them is simply no longer a source of disturbance. Society taught you that healing meant becoming gentler, softer, more accommodating, more available. That the end point of all your emotional work was a version of yourself that finally, perfectly caused no one any discomfort. Jung would tell you that's not healing. That's erasure with better branding. Real healing produces someone with a spine, someone with discernment, someone who has integrated everything they've been through and emerged not smaller and more manageable, but larger and considerably more difficult to diminish. The healed empath is not what society wanted them to become. They are what they were always meant to be, and there is nothing in the world quite like them.